This video is brought to you by Wesley Wyndham Pierce, Rogue Demon Slayer.
Dad, I'm in my underpants.
Yeah, that was your decision. You gotta live with it.
You know, there's only two fundamental truths in this crooked world of ours. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, and The Wedding of Bobby Hill is the best written episode of King of the Hill. It is so good, in fact, that I am going to be aggressively positive for this review, hyping it up with such enthusiasm that you rarely get to see from moi. And what makes it so good, you ask? Well, the fact that it manages to link together several extremely different plotline flavors in the most natural flow that you could ever dream of asking for, and all while using the same basic characters for each of these plot beats. We're not just jumping around from Peggy to Bill to Khan's dog, no! This is an examination, a laser-focused examination of Bobby and Luanne specifically, who both experience the thrill of someone new and exciting coming into their lives, and having the sting of that person make a painful exit. I'm actually really surprised that we didn't get to see more Bobby and Luanne-centric episodes throughout the series, as those two play off of each other brilliantly, where Roberto can come up to her level by being surprisingly mature, whereas Lulu has enough hilarious innocence about her that she often surprises us with an immaturity that we would normally expect to be seeing from somebody in Bobby's age group. There's just a wonderful Venn diagram of commonalities between them where they can both get overly excited or jaded, or, as we see in the later half of this story, super petty and vindictive.
You're getting to be a handful, Bobby, and nobody likes a handful.
But to really emphasize my point, my argument, my stance about how well written this story is, I want us to think about how King of the Hill stories are usually constructed. Typically, there's an A plot and a B plot running side by side simultaneously, usually with Hank and the guys doing one thing and somebody like Peggy or Bobby doing something else. A really good example of this sort of traditional structure is found in the upcoming episode, Love Hurts and So Does Art, which even has the two main set of events laid out in the title itself, Love Hurts and So Does Art. In that episode, we get Bobby and Connie dealing with their big gout prom drama as the headline conflict, whereas Hank is busy grappling with that pesky First Amendment in the secondary storyline. Grrr! Those stories were distinctly segmented and didn't ever meet in the middle, which is a very smart way of writing an episode because you can make the B plot longer or shorter depending on how much time you need to fill to get the thing to the desired 24 minutes or whatever your show's specific guidelines are about time. It is a good thing to have one storyline that's able to be more flexible just in case you went over or under the target. But other times we'll get story structures that are much more of an ensemble pooling of resources, where we'll see episodes like 3 Days of the Condo, where a large group of characters are put into one big scenario and we spend our time seeing how they all individually respond to the new environment. This format, which we'll just loosely call the dogpile method, is also seen in the Train Sex Mystery episode and in the one where they're putting together the Cowboys training video to compete with Wichita Falls. But The Wedding of Bobby Hill is a very different beast because we get one continuous and narrow storyline to follow, where Luanne's new love interest and Bobby taking care of Boomhauer's house quickly come together, merging those two storylines and using them to create further strife. The closest comparison that I can think of is Life in the Fast Lane, Bobby's saga, where Hank and the guys were also working at the very same racetrack that Bobby was, except in that case the two running plots didn't link up until the very end. However, instead of making us wait for the big climax, The Wedding of Bobby Hill smartly positions Butterball right in the middle of Luanne's dating life right from the get-go, making him a third wheel very early on in the first act of the story. If you can believe it, it only takes about 3 minutes to pass before we get this legendary exchange.
Hey, good looking.
Hey.
Oh man, that is so rad. But the point is, we spend almost no time setting the stage before the episode is already sprinting away from us, introducing concepts and characters with a speed that should be dizzying, but it never actually makes you feel rushed or confused. And because I really want to emphasize how impressed I am with this story's pacing and focus, let's painstakingly go through the first few minutes of this episode before Rad meets Bobby. The story opens with Boomhauer packing up to go meet a woman he's met on the internet, which is pretty weird because there are no women on the internet, you fool! Bill then gets mad about Bobby being given the job instead of him, then we hard cut to Luanne cutting the hair of a guy who immediately hits on her, then we break to Hank showing Bobby around Boomhauer's house, and then showing Bobby taking care of the place with with a very funny phone call from Dale, and then at that point, Rad rolls up to give us that like, hey, good looking line. These scenes are all super economical and perfectly structured to give us exactly as much information as we need and not a single sentence more before immediately jumping to something else that needs our attention and will move events forward. And yet, I think the thing that keeps these scenes from feeling too breathless to enjoy is that they're still given slower moments, or in one particular case, a very drawn out joke that does sort of feel like it goes on forever.
Name, number, date, and no dang old, no listening to nothing like that.
Boomhauer, pick up. Boomhauer, pick up. Pick up, Boomhauer. Oh, right, your way.
See, this is what I'm saying, man. It's able to deliver a ton of information and move the characters swiftly from one emotional state to another, while still dragging its feet just enough to trick us into thinking that we're going at a reasonable pace, but never making it feel too bloated. I also think it's because we stick so closely to Bobby and Luanne's perspective, you know, really relishing in how they're responding to all of these plot beats, that the pacing feels so natural. We don't have to keep checking in with how a side character is doing, where you'd have to like recenter the audience's attention on what was going on with that B-plot again while we weren't looking? I don't remember. Let's figure it out. Oh yeah, they're doing this. We don't get any of that here. It's all one continuous through line where one set of events evolves naturally into another and then another. The episode just trusts that the viewers are paying attention and that it can take us into weird territory because we've seen the thought process that it went through, we've seen the careful buildup of these odd landscapes and can appreciate them all the more for it. Because we go from Luanne dating Rad, to Rad hearing all about how Bobby has the run of Boomhauer's house, to the house party that then gets out of control, which causes Luanne to break off their affair, which itself all leads to the giant spiteful prank war between the two cousins. See, like, even just describing the events in sequence feels like I'm going too fast, because I am, because there's a lot of little things in here that slow everything down. There's all these critical moments of joy that space everything out, such as Bobby doing his best to impress Rad with a bit of improv street dancing. Now, did the writers or storyboard guys have to include a little mini scene where Luanne's group comes across a street musician and have Bobby spontaneously try to impress them with his moves? No, not at all, but in doing so, it shows how Bobby desperately wants this guy's approval in the way that little kids so often try to make themselves seem cool or funny or mature for older kids. If you've ever been to a big family gathering with a lot of younger cousins, then you will know how they try to cling to you and do stuff that they think you'll approve of or find cool and make you go, wow, or maybe you yourself was the younger cousin and you can remember doing stuff like Bobby's little dance. It all just says so much in so little time, where I am continually impressed by how fast they're able to sketch out these emotions and character desires. For example, Rad himself is the ultimate douchey hype man, the type of guy who says a lot of words, but virtually nothing of importance. Kinda like me. I mean, he tries to get Hank to sign up for AOL.com so he can get some free minutes of internet usage, and what a frickin' nostalgia rush that is to hear, oh my god. And he smooth talks Luanne into going out on a date with him in the most condescending way imaginable.
That's such a fine job. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna ask you out. You don't know it yet, but you're gonna say yes.
He's right!
It also helps that he's voiced by Matthew McConaughey, whose distinct Uvalde southern drawl makes Rad feel like everything he's saying has a cheeky double meaning, as if he's lying to your face and kinda laughing about it behind his hands, in a way where he thinks that he's like so slick, despite it being painfully obvious that he's not. And yet, this performance never goes into full-blown parody mode, where he feels like too stereotypical or inhuman to be real. I completely buy that there are thousands of identical 80s leftover douche nozzles like this out there, and you've probably run into at least one of them at some point in your life too. If anything, Rad's characterization is sort of this odd premonition of things to come, as his hyper-smug attitude is dead on for what cryptocurrency tech bros are like now, where in the modern days he'd be trying to like pitch how awesome the blockchain is, despite the fact that he is constantly chasing obvious shitcoin scams and has gotten too deep into his own bullshit to step away. Just buy the dip, bro.
AOL?
Mm-hmm. And guess what? If you sign up right now, I get 10 free hours. All you gotta do is tell them that So Rad at AOL.com sent you.
But you know, even though he is being written to be unlikable and eventually reveals that he didn't even consider Luanne and him to be an official item, there is something undeniably notable about him taking Luanne out for food. I don't know, he just hears her out about how she feels weird about going on a date since this is the first one that she's been on since Buckley's head exploded like a rotten watermelon being hit by the Gustav gun. Maybe he is just doing the like, yeah, baby, yeah, whatever you say, baby, kind of thing that so many horny jerks out there do, where they just pretend to listen to your many YouTube concerns until you finally take your pants off and whip out your boner, but I always thought that he was being authentic in being an attentive listener. That view, admittedly, doesn't really go with the kind of archetypal character that he is, especially since right after he comforts Luanne, he starts hitting up another guy with some chatter like, say, hey Jay, you got it going on? But I don't know, something about that moment always surprises me with how gentle he's appearing to be.
I didn't ever get to go anywhere this fancy with Buckley. Except his funeral reception.
I'm going to choose to believe that this reveals that even giant douchebags like Rad still maintain some level of humanity to them, some level of care and concern for others, where it isn't all self-serving indulgence and scheming on how to use emotional vulnerabilities to their advantage. Or hey, you know what, maybe I'm just being an overly sentimental douchebag myself, as so many people screamed at me when I stood up for Leon Petard's rehabilitation efforts, believing that he was genuinely trying to make an earnest effort at getting his life back on track, and that the episode was so desperate to make us mistrust those efforts that it had to resort to sticking him with one of the most villainous sponsors that the show could cough up. Sure, Mr. Strickland said they should spread drugs around the office like roach traps to get that boy hooked again, which implies that he wasn't on any drugs and that the efforts were working and everyone else at the company was the ones taking advantage of the disability thing. But Leon, he needed the lights dimmed, so that means he's still bad. Grrr! Look, if there's one thing that people out there hate more than relationship abusers or drug addicts, it's what Too Tall Jones calls a codependent enabler, which is apparently what I am, but you just don't know Radthibideoxys like I do. His internet connection runs fast, he's fine. And besides, if you heard about a swingin' bachelor pads like Boomhauer's was being guardianed by just the puffin' stuff poppin' fresh master himself, wouldn't you also invite your friends over to get busy and chill in a hot tub with the smoothest talker on this side of the Mississippi?
The only thing hotter than this tub is you two ladies.
Oh, he's so chill with it though. Smooth, Bobby, silky smooth. I can see how you managed to hook Missy Melons into unholy bliss. Also, can we take a moment to appreciate how much more slick and cool the animation team made Boomhauer's house? The last time, and the only time we've seen it up until this point, was when Luanne had her big fight with Uncle Hank and went to stay over at B-Dog's house, where the decor leaned much more into the style of a titty and car magazine. But here, he's got the koi fish, the bonsai tree, the hot tub, and all kinds of more nuanced and suave accoutrements. Editor's note. Upon further inspection of both episodes, it turns out that actually the animators were psychotically dedicated to making sure the same fixtures were present in both episodes, which is again very interesting because, you know, they didn't have to go that far. They could have like changed it up a little bit, but they chose not to. They kept everything the same, including that one picture of like the two fat guys hugging or whatever the fuck that's supposed to be, which is great. But I still think that my like big point here is still salient because they still showed us more things going on with Boomhauer than just like that one room. They showed us like the backyard and all the sort of stuff going on in his house. So yeah, I'm not editing this point out. It's staying in the video because fuck you. There's a much greater effort at showing a cultured side to the man, a refinement that isn't just making him into a sleazebag that's hyper-focused on sex, which is really appreciated and was very smart that they didn't make that his primary character trait.
Well, how do you like that? A camera in the bedroom. This is kind of fun.
Oh my god, he makes recordings of himself fucking. Never mind. Okay, well, while that admittedly isn't the best look for Boomhauer himself, we do get to see Hank and Peggy being adorably naive to what potential uses a camera in the bedroom could have, and that is worth so much more than whatever contradictory things they're trying to do with Boomhauser. Sometimes he's Mr. Sensitive that is left pining for a love long lost and chiding his scoundrel brother about the seriousness of wedding vows, and other times he's just out trolling for booty wherever he can find it. I don't know, I've always just found Boomhauer Boomhauer a bit messy and unfocused as a character, someone who really wants to be an actual human being with episodes that grant him real depth, but he is hindered by how these earlier episodes use him as a source of just trite, sexy jokes. The team did a much better job developing John Redcorn, who did meaningfully evolve out of being just a vehicle for how Nancy is cheating on Dale. That said though, Boomhauer is used to great effect here, where we're more focused on the distinct aesthetics of his bachelor lifestyle and how those fixtures themselves can be interesting. It's doing a lot of really good showing without ever telling us anything, which gives us an intimate peek at how the man lives and what sort of things he keeps around his home. This would actually make for a really fun exercise for like a writing or a theater group, or as like an arty like IKEA display, where you have to try to tell the story of a person's personality only using the type of things that you find in their living space. This is why I'm so impressed that the episode actually provided us a look behind the curtain into Boomhauer's life, much in the same way that we often get to see Dale's basement kingdom of oddities.
I like it in here. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
And speaking of Dale, I don't even know if I can show this on YouTube, but this episode does give us a full blast view of Dale's skinny butt, which is very much in the style of the late 90s and early 2000s, where they were far more comfortable showing off guys' asses than they are today. They still never really showed any female butts back in the day, where the closest thing you might get is a bit of side cheek with Nancy there in the dream sequence, but for the guys, it was open season. Phew, I don't know how many times I've seen Homer Simpson's ass. My god, it's burned into my memory forever. So while Dale stepping out in his Speedo might catch some people off guard today, let me tell you that sights like that were common and viewed in a more comedic light back when this episode aired, whereas I think today audiences would be more shocked and repulsed by it. There's actually a whole interesting conversation to be had about how younger folks in Gen Z are seemingly more hostile to or unaccepting of stuff like this, where they find it painfully awkward and ask like, is this even necessary? And I think a lot of that stems from how tight-fisted social media platforms are with lewd content and the social fear of being called a gooner for even looking at stuff like this. It's honestly very sad to see young people so puritanical and stuffy, so unwilling and uncomfortable with sex and just human bodies in general. I know a lot of people out there will tell each other to go touch grass, bro, but I wish that some of these tiresome and juvenile 20-year-olds would go touch a fucking bush for God's sakes. Please start fucking each other and understand that you don't have to be so goddamn miserable all the time, or at the very least find someone that you'd be comfortable recording a news anchor thing in your bedroom, at the very least.
This is Hank Hill with the news.
Hi. You are terrible.
So while Hank, Peggy, and Dale are busy exploring each other's warm fronts, Bobby and Luanne are left grappling with the loss of Mr. Thibodeau. Interestingly, instead of falling into a deep depression, which is already what we saw happen when Buckley broke up with her, and later when he done got himself exploded, Luanne turns her emotions outward this time, creating a very tense situation with Bobby.
You were never even part of his inner circle. You were just a hanger-on.
Take that back.
Like AJ.
Got him! Got him!
And this is where the episode goes off the rails in the best possible way. Everything up until this point has just been the show carefully setting the stage, cultivating the perfect environment for these two to get extremely mad and start taking it out on one another. But because the show was being smartly cautious of making Bobby feel too much like an unlikable brat, they did include a small scene where he goes to Dale and asks him for help on planning his revenge. This means that we can attribute many, if not all, of his ideas to Dale, who is a far more roguish misanthrope, meaning that we've come to expect that he would have a number of cruel and impish pranks locked and loaded. As a matter of fact, Bobby probably remembers all too well how vicious Mr. Gribble can be, as he bore witness to Dale utterly destroying Hank's lawn with fire ants of all things. So if there's anybody who has already proven himself to be a delightfully devilish schemer, it is going to be the albino buffalo himself. Had they instead decided to forego Dale and just had Bobby do all of his pranks on Luanne on his own, then that would have redefined how we see the little butterball, because it would imply that he has more of a cruel imagination than we previously thought, and that does go against his more innocent and dopey personality. In contrast to Bobby, though, Luanne doesn't need anybody to coach her along, as she has already shown herself to have a unique mean streak that can come out if somebody really pisses her off.
Don't you worry, Luanne. We will get this right soon enough, huh?
Yeah, that girl's crazy, just like her mama, but damn if I don't love them both. And so, we are then treated to one of the most fun back and forth battles of wit and cruelty ever, with all the nasty little pranks that you could ever ask for. On Bobby's side of things, he tricks her into blasting an air horn in her ear, cuts out the ass of her jeans, and replaces her birth control pills with candy. And one of those is definitely a huge escalation over the others.
Anyway, that's how I lost my medical license.
I wonder if it was Dale who told him to mess with some sort of medicine that she had, or if this was truly a Bobby original thought. It's kind of nice how they leave the specifics of who said to do what vague, meaning that both Dale and Bobby are in like a Schrodinger's cat situation, where both parties are innocent and guilty of everything that he does. Although, I have always loved how Luanne was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for the pants one, and didn't immediately jump to any conclusions.
If I find out that this was you and not a laundry accident, I'm going to be really mad.
I like this line because it shows that she's not like so out of control and berserk that she's willing to attribute random accidents to Bobby, and I think that's how a lesser show would have tried to escalate the tension through like a whoops-a-daisy misunderstanding, which would have shied away from making the characters actually take a risk at being unlikably mean to each other. It definitely would have said like, oh, let's play it safe here. We don't want these characters to come off as too jerk-ass, so let's just like make it an accident. Whoopsie. As for what Luanne does, her pranks strike deep into the heart of Bobby's creature comforts, getting him where he's most vulnerable. She puts dirt in his fruit pies, glues his big ol' head to his pillow, tricks him into an incestuous shotgun marriage, and does something unspeakable to his milk.
Oh, you might want to stop drinking that milk.
Ew.
My brain is saying laxatives, my heart is saying anchovy juice, and my disgusting soul says that he just gulped down a mouthful of her breast milk. Oh God, what a burden it is to have consciousness. Who let me have this? Ugh. Now, what really adds the dripping cherry on top of this boob juice milkshake is how Luanne recognizes that Bobby swapped the pills and plays up how she's become pregante, meaning that she weaponizes his own attack against him. And this is where things go from just like off the rail to strapping us into a cackling roller coaster into hell. Because once Bobby's mind goes into full panic mode about what he's accidentally done to his cousin's uterus, we get the granddaddy of all out of context lines.
Mom, Dad, I've gotten Luanne pregnant.
Shit, man, they really went for it, didn't they? They really threw those balls to the wall as hard as they could, and damn if this thing isn't all the better for it. Bravo! Better still, this is only the beginning of Bobby's torment, as once Hank and Peggy have been informed to what's really going on, they decide that he needs to learn a hard lesson about messing with people's medication. And yeah, you could say they went overboard and committed too many resources to this whole thing and took it all way too far, but I don't blame them for wanting to put a hard chokehold on their kid fucking with medicine of all things. You really don't want your potential future caretaker thinking it's funny to swap out your seizure medication with Skittles, you know? Ugh. And so, in the most gloriously unhinged segment of the whole series, Hank and Peggy tell their son that he has to marry Luanne as a punishment, going so far as to not only set up a whole backyard ceremony for it, but also a bachelor party at the fun center of all places. How many traumatic experiences are we gonna have there now? Come on! What's so crazy about all of this is that it definitely took a few days of planning to pull off, where poor Bobby was left to stew in his panic for multiple nights, possibly even as long as a week, with his dreaded day of matrimony drawing inevitably closer. I'm honestly shocked that he didn't try running away from home, although he does take the time to mourn the loss of the one that he really wants to be with.
You go on and do your homework. Just let me watch you for a little while.
Aw, he loves her in, like, his own little weird Bobby way, but he does love her. Aw. So after being treated to both fun center goodies and a night of pining after love lost, the big day arrives and, oh, beautifully, we are granted the greatest nosy neighbor misunderstanding ever.
Man, it's finally happening. Bobby Hillbilly is marrying Hillbilly cousin. You owe me $5!
Yes, man. I love when the audience is comfortably within the context for all the weird stuff going on, but we're given a side character who has no idea what's happening, so it all looks super weird to them. Oh, how bemusing. Stuff like this really highlights how odd even mundane lives can be, where the steps taken to reach a certain state are what makes certain social situations acceptable, where they wouldn't be if we just jump straight into them without knowing what's happening. And there's so many extra layers of that shit going on here, especially when Hank and Peggy pull their own big trick on Luanne, lying to her and saying that, oh my god, Bill is actually a licensed minister, so she did just marry Bobby, and she can't just lie about spousal abuse to get a quick divorce.
The law is you have to wait a year. That's to give you time to patch things up.
No!
It is so wonderful that those two were willing to twist the knife one extra time, as it demonstrates that Hank and Peggy aren't above some tomfoolery, which I think makes them far more likable as people. It sort of reminds me of how Aang lied to those two dumb tribes in the reviled episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Great Divide, and how some fans get all pissy that the Avatar himself would dare to tell an untruth, oh goodness! But it's because it was the wrong thing to do that makes that whole thing work, because life isn't a constant test of your moral character, where if you fall flat even once then you failed some grand goodness test. That is too much guilt to live with, man. Just have some goddamn fun in your life and trick your dummy of a niece into thinking that her dummy thick butt just married her prepubescent cousin, leading her to angrily drag him to the bedroom, which Bobby rightfully fears.
Please, Luanne, I don't think I'm ready for this yet.
Oh, has there ever been a more hilarious use of the word yet? Yet. That poor kid has been mentally trying to prepare himself for this moment. He knew what was coming and has been dreading it more than any of us can know. Just look at him on the ground, struggling to breathe. That's how I feel every second of my goddamn life. Ugh. But thankfully, because Bill has all the kindness of a pile of crabs in a bucket, he can't stand the sight of even a fake marriage and decides to drag them back down by revealing the truth.
Why do they get to be so happy? It's not fair. It's not fair. It's a fake. It's all a fake. I'm not a minister. Private Taylor is gay.
Oh, you Judas! How many times must I see you sabotage your peers? What a price to pay to have Bill in your life. Shit. This also does make me wonder how long Hank and Peggy were going to leave the kids in the dark about this sham marriage. Like, how long was the original plan supposed to go on for? Or were they just willing to sit back and wait until things reach their natural boiling point? Either way, I think that the mutual relief that both Bob and Luanne feel is the perfect way of closing their rivalry and makes them appreciate how silly this whole thing got, instead of them both getting mad at each other again and vowing vengeance, which would have been a really mean-spirited way to end this story. But no, instead we get a far better conclusion, being a super wholesome and cheerful way to close this out, but is importantly, very importantly, lampshaded by them revealing all the other pranks that they had already set up.
Oh, you might not want to ride downhill on your bike. Something might be wrong with the brake cable.
Whew, whoa, damn, the girlie was really out here cutting brake lines. That's, some potentially fatal shit you're getting up to there, Missy, my god. All Bobby has is some paper snakes that he's put in your laundry basket, and here you are setting him up to die, cause that boy never wears his damn helmet since it would obviously mess up his hair. This really was the best way to wrap things up because it allows us to revel in the creativity of the prank war, but without actually having to see any of these worst case scenarios come up, and demonstrating how far these two were willing to take this thing, which then maintains the feverish energy that had been building up ever since Rad departed. And it really is that one word, energy, that I think best embodies the strongest qualities of the episode and why I have such respect for it. The whole thing just becomes a very fun game of yes and, which is what allows it to maintain focus while also still feeling like it's going in all kinds of different directions. They very easily could have gone a more traditional way and just did one storyline about oh, Luanne trying to get out of a bad new relationship, or Bobby doing something to screw up Boomhauer's house while he's away with a wild party. Either one of those options would have made for a sufficient enough story on their own, but instead they chose to marry those two concepts together, forming a more complex structure that somehow benefits from having the strongest parts of both of those ideas. And yeah, Rad himself is kind of the weakest part of the whole story, where he's not nearly as memorable as some other villains like Trip Larson or Alabaster, but he serves his purpose and doesn't overstay his welcome, which I really appreciate. In fact, I think he does leave the story at just the right time and in the right way, because if he had been a more interesting guy like Alabaster, then we would have been left feeling a bit shortchanged that they didn't have such a fascinating figure feature more heavily in the episode. Rad being a smooth-talking, two-dimensional douchebag is literally all that he needs to be, just somebody for Luanne to fall in love with and for Bobby to latch onto and try to impress. This episode, more than any other in my opinion, knows how to put forward ideas and characters just long enough to squeeze the right amount of entertainment value out of them, before then using those same ingredients to make the story's upcoming ideas feel even more fulfilling, which sounds like a simple enough concept on paper, but it is rarely done to this masterful degree, where so many different and seemingly random elements can line up so perfectly. It is truly the distillation of all the skills and character traits that we've been watching the show develop over the course of the last 2 seasons, where the writers are now wholly in their stride and have all the confidence to deliver the most ludicrous ideas in a profoundly enjoyable fashion. And by some divine miracle, the episode never gets in its own way or hinders itself with concerns that they might be taking things a little too far or going into weird territory. No, if we're gonna be weird, then let's be weird. Go in with your full chest out, and God bless them, the Mad Lads really did it. They stuck to their guns and they stuck the landing, and for that, you have earned a round of applause from me. Bravo!
Uncle Hank! Bobby's trying to get out of marrying me!
Bobby, you cut that out.
Do you understand what I'm saying here? They allowed the progression of events to naturally build and become something monstrously powerful, a plot that stands head and shoulders above everything else that they ever did. Well, except for maybe one thing.
Duke became aroused and was attempting to become physically intimate with you.
Oh my God.
It's a compliment, really.
Oh, fuck me. Oh God. That episode is swiftly on the way, because season 3 of King of the Hill is apparently where they decide to let the maniacs run the show, and anybody who tried to say no to any of this was quietly taken out back and turned into dog meat. However, we're not returning to La Grunta quite yet, as there is something a bit more whimsical that we have to talk about first. A story all about the world of, ooh, dare I say the word itself, magic.
And now I step inside the piñata.
No, she's supposed to go in there. That's not how you do the trick.
Psst. Have you figured it out yet?
Oh yes, that's right, it's the episode where Hank falls to his lowest moral point ever and seals Peggy in a frickin' box because he was driven insane by how his stubborn Vulcan logic failed to beat a dime store magician, and what an episode description that is, oh lord. But that's a discussion for another day. For now, we can say that this episode of King of the Hill, the best written of the whole damn series and beautifully titled The Wedding of Bobby Hill, has indeed been reviewed to death. A huge house party size thank you goes out to Hazel, Andrew M, and Obsidian Moonfox for being $20 Patreons, whose money goes to funding my AOL dial-up connection and expensive wedding gifts for all the phony ceremonies I attend. Another big thank you also has to go out to Undermined Crimp, Dominic O, Marsha B, Reign Supreme, Valerie Vomit, and Mr. Siegel 16. And of course, I do appreciate my $5 patrons and YouTube channel members who got access to this video a week early. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.
Just take 2 now. Hurry.
That would destroy my insides. That's how it works.
Take 'em!